Welcome back. So this module kind of builds on our business history lectures, and it's also going to build on our discussion of the dynamic environment. And the topic for this module is scenario building. So a scenario building is more or less a way for you to create or craft a narrative, and it's a narrative based on a variety of different possible futures. And these futures should be inspiring or shocking, yet also based on observable trends. I always think about scenario building as kind of like being a historical fiction or a science fiction writer. You need to have some sort of a very obvious grounded fact in your story, but then you also need to blend the fantastic. Of course, you don't want to have anything that's too much grounded in the mundane, because that's a useless scenario. That's just stating a bunch of facts. And you don't want to have anything that's just too outlandish, because that's just making up something strange that nobody would believe. So it's a way for you to craft a narrative. So it's our first kind of vocabulary term for this module, scenario. It's a way for you to craft a narrative to kind of predict a variety of different futures based on observable trends. And how do we do scenario building? Well, first of all, you need to specify what is your reality under study. So what industry do you want to talk about? What's the attractiveness of that industry? Are there any specific strategic groups or key success factors you want to examine? And what time horizon are you looking at? Are you looking at, extreme short run, like 6 months, maybe a little bit medium term, like 5 years, or are you looking at the extreme long run, like generational or over the next 20 or 30 years? Okay. Then you come up with a list of different variables, what we call actors and factors. Now, if you saw my dynamic environment lecture, that is one method for generating variables, asking yourselves questions about each of the different levels of analysis within the dynamic environment. We'll also do a pest analysis in this module. But this is at least one way to, so whether it's a dynamic environment or the pest analysis, you need to come up with a list of variables. Granted, if you are working in a given industry, you probably already know what the different variables are. However, we frequently have writer's blocks, and using the dynamic environment or the pest analysis is a way to either unblock your writer's block or have some sort of a way to kind of use it as a checklist to make sure that you didn't miss anything important. So once you've got your different variables set up, you will identify what we call pivot variables. And a pivot variable is something that you don't know whether it's going to happen, so we call high uncertainty or low certainty, depending on how you draw your graphs. But if it does happen, that's high impact and we need to be worried about it. So I don't know if that'll happen, but if it does, I better pay attention. Okay. So within each scenario, at least for purposes of this exercise, you'd select, I like to select around 2 pivot variables. And then you want to identify your key variables. And key variables are things that are very certain, so low uncertainty or high certainty, depending on the way you wish to pitch it, and also high impact. And then what you want to do is you want to smash your key variables along with your pivot variables. And I generally advise you to have 1 key variable and 2 pivot variables. If you have too many key variables, basically the scenario looks like something like an episode of The Golden Girls, or Seinfeld. It's cute, it's funny, but who cares, right? If you have too many pivot variables, you basically have something that's like The Lord of the Rings, The Matrix. Wow, that sounds like an awesome story, but that's probably not going to happen here at our company, right? So you're acting kind of like a historical fiction or a science fiction writer. You are blending the fantastic with the obvious, and that's what makes a good narrative. What I like to do is, have kind of smash these together, so I'll get 1 key and 2 pivots together, and I'll do that 3 times to come up with 3 mini scenarios. I write a little bit of a narrative to go with each mini scenario, and then I pick one particular narrative that I would recommend to the boss. What I like to do is have a couple of scenarios that aren't really that great, and then have one scenario that's really great, and you can kind of tell the boss, well, we've come up with these different scenarios, and you can kind of pick which one you think is the most likely, and that empowers your boss and makes them feel like they can choose, versus if you just give them one scenario, they feel like you're telling them what to do, which is obviously a negative thing. Bosses like to feel empowered. They like to feel like they're making the big decision. And so by having 3 scenarios, 2 that are probably not that good, and then the one that you actually think is your ace in the hole to present to the boss, is usually the best way to go about it, I believe. So what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to do the pest analysis. And so we're in the stage where we're actually going to be generating variables first. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.